This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders.
It's a tale as old as time. The king is dead, long live the king. It's somehow been less than 18 months since Jonathan Sexton last set foot on an international rugby pitch. Incumbent of the green 10 jersey since 1823, perhaps unsurprisingly, Rathgar's proudest nuclear reactor with limbs vacating the throne created a meltdown, the like of which Irish rugby has rarely seen before. But instead of the power vacuum that the Kingdom of Cymru is seeing post Dan Biggar, the fall of Emperor Sextown has created a war of desperation, a fundamental struggle that's tearing the Irish fan base in two. Do they turn to democracy, the people's champion Jack Crowley, who scrapped a lifetime to get here, or the unassuming but undeniably talented upstart prince Sam Prendergast, cast into the spotlight so quickly, seemingly just because he looked a little bit like the lad who wore the crown for so very, very long? Well, after 1 year of Crowley being pretty great, yeah, Andy Fowle and subsequently Simon Easterby made the decision. Over this year's Six Nations, Sam Prendergast ascended to the throne and now sits less than a month away from what feels like an increasingly inevitable British and Irish Lions call-up at age just 22. So, with wild discourse already becoming rampant on either side, and no doubt about to go up another degree on May the 8th when he's selected over Finn Russell, Marcus Smith and the prime Phil Bennett, revived by a witch after the W performed a blood sacrifice of Sam Costello, it's time to look at this objectively. To take Sam Prendergast and, as an outsider with no boat in the race, horse in the race, anything in the race really, or honest to God, really, I'm saying this, reason to be biased towards one 10 or another, answer the question. Never mind his ceiling. Never mind his potential. Never mind how good he might be in 2 or 3 years' time. Just how good is Samuel Prendergast right this minute at Rugby Union? It's been a few years since rugby produced a talent as talked about as Prendergast, yet in my time I can't remember a youngster so polarising, so controversial. Whilst the idea he's going to be excellent is pretty much universally agreed, the current situation, discussion, discourse is essentially boiled down to one question that has to be answered. Is he ready? Answering this question essentially comes down to assessing two separate areas of the Prender child's game: the decision making and the execution. We'll start with the former, then get on to the latter, then the fact that he couldn't tackle a fish supper, because quite frankly, whilst there are some very rough parts to his game, the reality is Sam Prendergast's ability to read a rugby match is quite staggering, and that's the thing I want to talk about here above all else. To be more specific, the Prender point of difference is really his ability to read a game, scan, readjust, and change his read on the fly. This bomb from the Six Nations, and I apologise, your internet connection is about to get really quite flickry. It's going to look like just a series of still images, but I promise you, it's your broadband, is a prime example. As Doris carries, the Prender boy readies his Prender legs to send an increasingly trademark bomb over Finn Russell's head, but Grant Gilchrist makes a great charge on the chosen one, and he shuffles out of the way. Now, the instinct most tends here is probably just to carry themselves, but not only does Prendergast still line up the kick, he adjusts his aim accordingly for how the situation has now changed. The temptation is probably to put the kick around here as deep downfield as possible without Russell calling the mark, with Keenan now in line with the Prender kid, having lost momentum from his run-up thanks to the Prender stepper's antics. The 10 instead changes the trajectory and hangs it 10 metres in front of Russell, giving Keenan the huge advantage and the time to get in the air, as no Scottish player can get across in time. This puts Ireland massively on the front foot. Prendergast calls an attack against an unstructured backpedaling Scottish defence. Similarly here, right? Darge targets his right foot, so Sammy shimmies, swivels and switches to the spiral. The ball flies over Jordan's head, and in taking too long to pick up an object famous for bouncing horribly, Jordan gets charged down. Ireland massive net gain in territory. This isn't just great vision, it's so often like a 3D mapping of the field that's updating in real time. This is a gorgeous example of how we can do it without the boot from the knockout game against Harlequins the other week. This overthrown lineup puts Leinster on the attack out of nowhere, and as such, not much shape is set. The Prenderween calls it out the back, but without time to set properly, Snyman's passes off target and hits the floor. However, the speed at which Prendergast regathers, looks up, scans the Queen's defence, and lobs this insane pass over the top is crazy. It gets Leinster onto the outside, and with it, the front foot. Going forwards at a rate, but some great work by Don Brunt here slows the ball down and forces 9 McGrath to take a backward step, taking momentum entirely out the attack and giving the defence an edge. So, the Prender Bairn puts pace back into the attack with this beautiful pass, putting it gorgeously in front of Snyman to force him to run onto, meaning he accelerates into that full pelt, matching the Queen's defence, which has the edge on line speed and accelerating first. His offload is loose, but Prendergast once again adjusts into the boot and loads into the loop his predecessor made so famous without needing to look. He just flicks it into the air for Lowe to run onto. Complete understanding of his surroundings at all times. If Lowe allows Conan to draw and give, Sheehan possibly scores down the touchline, but it's still a pretty exceptional bit of lemonade out of lemons. Almost topped off by Prendergast's own cross kick. Execution pretty close, but Keenan just beaten in the air a few moments later. This incredible mapping of the pitch exists in even the most simple of balls, but also beyond that. For Sam Prendergast had gone to Squarespace to make himself a beautiful website. Always want to think ahead with the world's easiest to use website builder. Prendergast was able to not just put together his website in minutes, but control the entire site simply through their easy to use menus and features, assembling everything and using their wide sitemap feature to optimize the entire website at once, increasing SEO. He's obsessed with SEO, is Sam Prendergast. He thinks the S in it stands for Sam Prendergast, as well as make simple tweaks and apply them to the entire site in one fell swoop. And if you want to do exactly the same and build your own beautiful website, want to head to the link in the description and use the offer code SquidRugby to save yourself some money. The loop might have been Sex Grandad's trademark, but with potentially another 26 years of his career to go, and feeling this pass instead might be Prendergast's. The interception bait. Every 80 minutes Prendergast plays, there seems to be maybe 6 or 7 passes that are an inch off being picked off by an opponent and intercepted. Balls like this, a pass so good it managed to put even Rabbi Slimani into a gap despite him being bigger than the gap itself. Yet, across watching back most of his season so far, we found just 2 passes that actually got picked off, actually touched by an opponent. One by Tom Ramos, the world's leading merchant of bullshit, and this, which wasn't even intercepted. It was just knocked on and given as a penalty try and yellow card, which is perhaps even a greater result than what he was going for. Now, whilst there's a very decent chance that somewhere in the next 2 years, players start to anticipate and second guess the Prender laddie and start intercepting these more regularly, for one, this video isn't about 2 years' time, and 2, this trademark pass is less a go-to move and more a result of the core way that Sam Prendergast plays the game, and it so often opens up so much space. One of the most common criticisms of the Prender descendant is that he doesn't take the ball to the line in the same way Crowley or many other fly halves do. But to say that is to focus on the face in the Rubens vase and ignore what he's actually doing. Sam Prendergast very rarely moves more than maybe 2 or 3 steps after catching the ball, but that's because his philosophy, his style of play, his approach to the game is entirely different and negates this. It's not relevant. Where many, if not most, tend to start around here, giving them time to run onto the ball and bring pace to the attack themselves, the Prender Pickney starts around here, incredibly flat, almost in the defensive line, almost on the gain line himself. Even when playing out the boot, he does almost all of his movement off the ball, running into position, adjusting last second, and only taking it at the moment he has to perform his next action, be it passing, kicking, or on the rare example, carrying himself. Admittedly something he doesn't like to do very much and doesn't seem very comfortable when he does it. Where a Crowley, or for that matter Marcus Smith, Finn Russell, Gareth Anscombe, his current competition, wants to get the ball in their hands and then make a decision as the picture changes, Prendergast makes 90% of his choices before the rubber ever hits his fingertips. As such, the Sam Prendergast way is broadly to get the ball back out of his hands as quickly as possible. Sometimes a pass requires a wind up or he has to hold it an extra second to better bait a defender, but he's usually looking to ship it on or kick it as fast as possible. So often that is a split second it hits his palms, and if you're taking a second to make a decision after catching, that to him wastes time. This isn't to say he doesn't readjust or rescan, see the previous segment, but so many of his choices are made in anticipation and he doesn't even process them once the ball comes into his hands. Where a fly-half like Beauden Barrett, Richie Mwanga or Marcus Smith wants to use their pace to engage a defender, not only is Prendergast not especially fast, not standout pace for a fly-half, he also runs like an idiot and probably doesn't want that exposed to the world, so has built his game very differently to involve as little running as possible while still presenting the same threats. Here, with the ball just inches out from the try line, he stood in roughly the position a forward trying to smash over, trying to just drive over would be, and as such, every Australian defender is trained to come up fast and try to smash anyone stood this flat, just fly up on them in a straight line, and that's exactly what he wants as he pops it over the top, way too fast for Australia to react, creating the try. And this is a glorious example. All of his movement is off the ball, adjusting several times, meaning that when he eventually takes it, he's basically already on the gain line and can flick the ball back out his hands instantly to put James Ryan over for a try, which clearly takes some talent. Because he's so long, that rib cage looks like a flashing red weak spot in a video game boss to an opposition forward, and so much of Prendergast's game is built around around himself being targeted. He wants forwards flying in on him. That's so much of his game. He's so nonchalant. The number of times players go in for tackles and he just brushes past them and moves on into the next position. It helps that his body language is almost entirely unreadable. If I pause right here, right, and put up multiple choices for what you personally watching this video think he's going to do and invite you to comment with your guess, I doubt 50% of you will get it right. I certainly wouldn't. So what chance does a defender who doesn't have a freeze frame, doesn't have nearly as long, have to make this decision and adjust in a split second? This approach does come with risks, however. He's incredibly composed and confident in almost all situations, almost to a robotic degree. And sometimes that comes out the other end as too nonchalant. He doesn't even check if there's a gunner coming out the line on this kick attempt here and ends up charged down as a result. Though admittedly, he does pretty well afterwards. Or here is so focused on drawing the opposition defender in, he doesn't check whether there's a runner on his inside, whether they're open, ending up giving JGP a pretty unideal ball, which again, he makes the most of, but it's not a great option for him. He's focused on one task at a time. This grubber, on the other hand, is sort of on, but pretty inarguably the wrong option. Same with this decision to play at the 22 whilst Glasgow are fully numbered up here. Yet these moments are very much in the minority. Show me every young 10 in history who didn't overplay a bit in their first year as international, and I'll thank you for showing me Roman Untamak. His style of play is probably best summed up by one stat this season. So far, he has made just 4 line breaks himself, but assisted 44. In the Autumn Nation series alone, he assisted 7 in just 154 minutes of rugby. Prendergast's whole game as a fly half is about the players around him. His moments of great skill are unflashy, apart from this one. This one, admittedly, is very, very flashy, but I'll get in the video somewhere. They're a conduit to more impressive moments from his teammates. He's a membrane in a system built for a guy like him. Some players play rugby like it's chess, but he plays it almost like it's Tetris. Instead of facing an opposition, it's a series of automatic processes he goes through, putting pieces in place to produce the highest score possible. It's an extremely effective and frankly extremely Leinster approach to the game. The Prendertine is a product of the system we outlined in a shiny, very lovely video that is up there. You can go have a look at elsewhere. That had him playing the same style and brand of rugby since he was about 12, and it's such an automatic process to him. And that system has now essentially birthed a kid custom built to play the game plan that Leinster and Ireland both deploy. This only became more relevant as, under Simon Easterby, the boys in green started playing a much more kick-first game plan, playing right into the hands of Sam Prendergast. Ireland kick long. That's become the core of the game plan over this year's Six Nations, and Sam Prendergast has an absolute cannon of a boot. He put in the longest bump of this year's Six Nations and regularly makes contacts like this, clearing from his own 22 up to near the opposition's. Into this comes the fact that he might already be, and this is high praise, but I might stand by it, the best line kicker on penalties in the world already. The distance he can chew off is ridiculous. The way he puts Leinster and Ireland into attacking positions off any penalty is such a weapon in a team or pair of teams that are increasingly territory-based. From a tactical point of view, he's currently also very strong, regularly finding grass and opening up space, and his huge boot coming in very handy with 50-22 attempts, something Ireland are increasingly looking to target. However, there is still work to be done on kicking duels. This one he initiates against La Rochelle, looking to pin the winger into a tricky situation to counter kick, but whilst Barrett's swing back is fine, Prendergast himself, when reverting back into that position, is sort of out of position and clueless on the follow-up, losing Leinster some 20 metres of territory. It's not really a part of the Irish game plan, so it's less of a concern at international level, but it does stand out a little bit in what is otherwise a pretty excellent kicking game and a pretty excellent decision-making process in coming towards most of those kicks. Whether it's looking to just pin the opposition back in the corner, going for those O'Gara-style kicks down the line, or thumping it more down the middle to try and push the opposition back and create chances to counterattack from then hitting it back to you. Because there is a weird asterisk after any and all praise of the Prender child so far, as he's scarcely played in a tight game. Leinster have one of the deepest squads in pro rugby, one of the biggest budgets, and it's resulted in a series of blowouts, even in knockout games in the biggest club competition in the world. And his games for Ireland have broadly been comfortable wins, with the exception of one comfortable loss. There's a legitimate question mark over how he'd handle the situation, like the scrappy game by the scruff of the neck situations Crowley regularly finds himself in almost every single week for Munster, and almost always excels in, or Sexton did throughout his entire career, particularly for Ireland, tournament because Prendergast just genuinely hasn't been in one yet, so it's very, very hard to talk about. In fact, the closest game Prendergast has played in so far this season, the 2-point victory over La Rochelle in January, he was brought off while Leinster was still 10 points ahead. It was only on Ross Burns' count that game management was required in the end. As such, his role in those commanding wins shouldn't be underestimated, yet if we want a realistic look at his game management in tight matches where pressure is on, or at least matches where everything isn't a possession, where everything isn't going their way, where it's not an armchair ride, there's really only one performance to look at. And I apologise, your internet connection is about to get stuttery once again. The France match from this year's Six Nations. The Prender sperm received a lot of criticism for this performance, and whilst I'll get onto his defence in a moment, over that much maligned second half, Prendergast touched the ball 17 times, right? 13 of these I'd broadly label as positive contributions, ranging from this beautiful ball to Gary Ringrose to create a try, to a number of very nice kicks, including this lovely bomb which ultimately led to the penalty from which Dan Sheehan scored their first try. One of those 17 I'd call not great, a minor leagues hospital pass, but 3 of them sit on that pretty uncomfortable walkway between unfortunate and shit. This is just a poor decision. As discussed, he's so used to things going his way, even once BLBRA closes off the space, he continues to overplay and forces a poor pass. Here, Jegu just smashes him and he fails to protect the ball, and then there's the intercept. His eyes are solely on Ramos, knowing if he can fix him, the space will open up for Henshaw, but Untermack does a brilliant job here of double jobbing to get out and cover the Prender Sprog, allowing Ramos to adjust and go for the intercept. It's the risk of playing so flat. Sometimes the game changes from outside your peripheral vision in a split second, and you don't have time to turn your head. Even the 3D mapping fails because ultimately he only has one set of eyes, and I think that should be counted as a major point against him in Lions contention. On reflection, under analysis rather than emotional reaction immediately following the game, 3 mistakes in a half isn't great from a fly half, especially when one is deep in your opposition 22 and another cost you a 14-point turnaround. But this was a broadly positive performance, a 6.5 out of 10, and if that's this kid's rock bottom at age 22 when put under this level of pressure by that pack and that team for the first time ever, and that defence, let's not forget, I suspect he's going to be worth persevering with. If the question we're looking to answer is Sam Prendergast ready? With the ball in hand, I think the answer is frankly and unequivocally yes. There's the odd rough patch, the odd error, sure, but this is a kid crafted to play test matches from an early age, now playing a gorgeous and subtle brand of rugby on the grandest stage, opening up an unprecedented amount of space for those around him, even if he isn't necessarily looking to create anything for himself. But unlike him, when the tackle pads come out, we can't avoid it any longer. Because Sam Prendergast is the latest in the very proud lineage of fly halves in rugby union who can't tackle to save their life. It's funny because I genuinely thought the days of Dan Parks and Ronan O'Gara were behind us, but evidently not, and part of me is quietly delighted about that. While some of the criticism points to his effort levels, I think his willingness to chase back on lost causes, and frankly, often some of his line speed says otherwise. The issue is almost entirely his technique and his mentality. Sam Prendergast's tackle technique is so poor he's probably better off just asking the ball carrier to fall over politely. He's almost always way too upright, just reaching his arms out and rarely wrapping or using his shoulder at all. Leinster have started using him much more smartly, deployed primarily in the backfield or hidden on the wing, tucked away and able to show that he is actually quietly excellent under the high ball. Another area of his game it's not being talked about. But when he is used in that main line, instead of being used as a legit defender, they're using him almost as a spooky ghost. Needham would probably best chucking a sheet over his head and having him yell woo as he applies line speed. The idea here is just to get in the defence's eye line and make them think they're under pressure, even if that pressure is coming from someone who's just as likely to rugby tackle him as Mr. Rogers, who has been dead for 22 years. I'll also note that he never seems to hit rucks, even if his teammates are completely isolated, which isn't a major point of derision for a fly half, but at test level it might start to make an impact down the line when every player is required to play every role. And yet, whilst this is a video about him now, rather than in 3 years' time, the Prendergast coaches at club and country level are Andy Farrell and Jacques Nienaber, arguably the 2 best defence coaches of the modern era. So I'd give very low odds they don't sort this sort of thing out before too long. And here's the thing, if Sam Prendergast was a prop and as good at scrummaging as he is at the core parts of fly half's game, which is creating space for others around them and kicking the ball, also including his goal kicking, which is pretty excellent, I doubt so many people would mind if he missed the exact same percentage of tackles, which admittedly was more than anyone else in the Six Nations this year. Because whilst I don't want to get caught up in how high his ceiling is or what his potential might be, I think it's very relevant to bring up just how much the Prender Babe has improved over the course of this season, 24-25. His first test start against Fiji had some outstanding touches. His timing on this pass is brilliant, and his pass selection here is phenomenal. Just really, really great, leading to a clean break, whilst this cross kick is superb and puts Mac Hansen over for a try. Once again, his body language is so hard to read until he's done something. Yet it was still very much a case of the rough amongst the smooth, be it slice kicks, drop balls, or a yellow card that seemed to put him off using his shoulder ever again for life. You can see the vision, but you're just living through a little bit of pain with it. By the Six Nations, and these knockout games beyond it, those creases have slowly been ironed out his game. It still isn't perfect, but he's gone up gears. Those errors are happening much less frequently. His kicking is on point more and more often. His tackles are still almost non-existent, but you can blow past that, much as oppositions tend to. Andy Farrell threw him in at an early age, and it seems he had a very good reason, because the kid is an extremely fast learner. The Sam Prendergast we're watching tear it up for Leinster right now is a desperately different prospect to the kid gangly dawdling his way through games at the start of the season, and I think there's a lot of fans who are very caught up in that guy that we were saying at the start of the year not being ready, and confusing that for the Sam Prendergast playing for Leinster and Ireland right now, and thinking, well, he clearly still isn't ready. It's only been a few months. It's somehow only been 18 months since Jonathan Sexton last set foot on an international rugby pitch. And that warped sense of time makes it easy to forget it was just 13 days after the haunted bottle of grumpy juice hung up his boots for the last time that Prendergast made his home debut for Leinster. Just his 4th professional appearance. This kid is absurdly young, yet with all the talent in the world and being managed and coached by the best in the game, beginning to show attributes that may take him one day beyond even his miserable mentor. Because ultimately, this comes back not to the question of whether he's ready, but a fact I think we're ignoring. Just because Sam Prendergast is currently a long way off his ceiling does not mean he's still languishing on the floor.
Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. That is our reflection on Sam Prendergast. There's plenty more coming. As mentioned, the Six Nations have become difficult, including the Women's Six Nations. So we're pivoting to doing some other stuff. So please, I hope you enjoyed that. There is loads more coming up in the not too distant future, including talk on Lions beyond just this guy.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about who might go. We've done a little thing talking about who might be thought about
in the
Andy
conversation.
Farrell. Yeah, which names he might be dreaming of at night. But we're going to talk some more about who should go, who might go, who won't go.
Yeah.
And all the controversial stuff around that. So that's exciting. Also, we're going to try and talk a little bit more about the Women's Six Nations, as you say, those difficulties with footage and stuff. We want to talk about that. We want to give that coverage. So go to the second channel, More Squidge Rugby, if you want to see any stuff about any of that.
What names do you dream about at night? For me, it's mostly one man.
Yeah.
Michael Rugby.
Nick Tompkins.
It's really ignorant talk that somehow people are biased and all this. It's not.